Hi, and welcome to Silent No Longer. I'm Mesha, and I'm truly grateful you're here. This podcast is a safe, judgment free space for healing, hope, and conversation for anyone who has lived through toxic or abusive relationships. I know what it feels like to be trapped, unheard, and unseen. I've walked through years of toxicity, financial hardship, and spiritual battles, but through faith, God restored my strength, and I found freedom. Now, my purpose is to help others discover the same healing and breakthrough. On this podcast, we'll share stories of resiliency, transformation, and faith. I'll open up about my own journey and we'll hear from guests who have walked similar paths and come out stronger. My goal is to remind you that you are not alone, that healing is possible, and that your past does not define your destiny. If what you hear resonates with you, you can dive deeper into my story in my book, Behind Closed Doors. And for those ready to take the next step in their healing, you can schedule a free clarity call with me if you're ready to break chains, release bondages, overcome limited beliefs, and build confidence and self worth. Thank you for joining me today. It's an honor to be part of your journey, and I can't wait to walk with you through this season of healing, hope, and breakthrough. Welcome to Silent No Longer, where your past is a chapter, not the whole book. Today, I'm joined with Joanne, a woman who lived through 7 toxic marriages before finally breaking the cycle and choosing to heal. Her story is powerful, honest, and full of hope. Joanne, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Right, I would just like to start with the beginning.
Right.
Can you start by sharing a little bit about your background and what your early understanding of relationship looked like while growing up?
Sure. I'm 71, so I grew up in the 50s and 60s. My childhood, I'm the third of fourth children, and for the most part, my mom stayed home. My dad worked. She didn't work till later. But I grew up watching Leave It to Beaver, the Donna Reed show, all these stories where you see the happy family and the dad goes off to work and, the wife is dressed all day in pearls and skirts and, does her housework in a dress. And it's like, I don't think my mom wore a dress most of the time, but, it's like I had this image that you find Mr. Right and you live happily ever after for a long, long time and you have lots of kids and everybody's happy all the time.
Mhm.
Well, that's not exactly the way it was in my family. We had a lot of happy memories, but turns out my dad was an alcoholic. So, we would often get punished for things we didn't do. But so my parents were strict, but again, it was the 50s and 60s and that's the way it was. So, but I grew up with a inaccurate picture of how relationships could or should be, and there was a lot of dysfunction. And my parents separated when I was in junior high, middle school, and so then I learned it's like I learned what it was like at an early age to be codependent and enabling. It's like I'm trying to find my dad from my mom, like for New Year's Eve, so she wouldn't be alone because they were separated. And it's like, well, why can't he come home and be with her? And she's sad, so of course I'm sad with her. And that bled over into many of my relationships. I take care of the man's needs first, and my needs always come last. And then I joined the Mormon Church when I was 12, and I thought, well, and they have a lot of great family values, obviously. And I thought, oh, okay, again, here's all these happy families at church, because that's the picture that's the image you portray. And I married 5 Mormons and they were great at church. They were lousy at home. But again, you think, well, if you just marry a man in the church, everything's going to be fine. You're going to have all these kids and you're going to think all the same things and be on the same page all the time. Well, that is certainly not the case in any relationship. But we didn't talk about a lot of the important stuff before we got married. So we just rushed into marriage most of the time because hormones are raging and, there's no premarital sex, supposedly. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
rule. So, image of relationships was not what it could have been.
Yeah, and you have to remember too that just because you go to church, it doesn't mean everybody who goes to church is perfect. They all
Correct.
have their own things that they're battling with, and they're on a healing journey too. Sometimes I feel like people forget that. Yeah. I understand also feeling like you have to be there for your parents, and especially whichever one you're living with after
Right.
a split up and thinking that you're responsible for their happiness. Yeah, my kids kind of went through that after I broke up
Mm.
with their dad. And then after I got my divorce, they were like, well, we don't want to leave you because you'll be sad. And I'm like, no, don't go live your life. Do what you want. Go hang out with your friends. Have fun. I'll be
Exactly.
fine. I need to go through healing too.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, you just have to make sure that, they know that they're not responsible for, being there to make you happy because
Yeah,
and
and
they're going
thankfully
through their own healing too, and they have to
yeah,
understand that too.
that's a good point. My daughter, unfortunately, I put her through several stepfathers, which were not obviously great stepfathers. They were
Mhm.
abusive and toxic. And, so in hindsight, we would have been much happier as a mother or daughter if I had stayed single for a longer period of time. I asked her one time, okay, well, what do you think about this guy? Do you like him? And again, she wanted me to be happy, but she was 7
Mhm.
at that time. And it's like, so sure, she's going to say, sure, mom, marry him if that's what makes you happy. Cause
Yeah.
what does she know? But now, she's almost 50, she would say, "No!" She very much speaks up. It's like, "No, I don't think he's the right one for you," or, and she was very vocal about my last husband, and
Mhm.
especially finally when I started realizing, "Oh, this isn't the marriage I thought it would be." But thankfully, she really didn't spend a lot of time thinking she was responsible for my happiness. She knew I was screwing it up all by myself.
Yeah.
So,
My kids are really good at that now that they're teenagers and young adult. If they start seeing something with maybe a guy I'm talking to or a
right.
friend or whatever, they'll tell me. So I don't think that person's right for me. Maybe you shouldn't be talking to them. And this is the reasons why. But we do that to each other. But it's good accountability, because sometimes people can see things that you can't see.
Exactly. Especially with my last ex, we were together a long time, but it took me a long time to realize it's like, oh, he's not Mr. Charming that I thought he was. And my daughter, it was later, she said, I just wanted to shake you. It's like, well, why didn't you sooner? Because, I wouldn't have listened probably.
Right.
And my sister was the same way. It's like, we were trying to tell you he's not
Hmm.
Mr. Right for you. And it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't listen.
Yeah. That's the
you know.
hard part.
Yeah. And now it's like it's on my list of things that are important to me for a future partner. It's like the family must approve,
Yeah.
you know.
So after, because you've been through quite a few toxic
Yes.
relationships, out of all the relationships, put together, like what is the biggest takeaway that if you were to sit here and you were to look back, like, is there one thing that was the same in all the relationships?
Say and again, 5 of them were Mormons, and they all
Mhm.
looked great at church. It was at home where it got dicey. Husband number 2 was my daughter's father, and again, he was very charming. He was not a Mormon, but he was very charming, but we only courted a month, so you can be really charming in a month. And it wasn't that he was mean, but he had an alcohol and substance abuse problems that I didn't know about before we got married. And number 7, not a Mormon, he was just charming and educated and smart. It's like, "Oh, this is nice." And I would say that probably, the common thread was, um, for many of them, it's like, well, I didn't wanna be alone, and, I thought I had to get married to have any kind of physical intimacy type of thing, but it was like that they were very charming, and so I just kind of fell into this pattern of really not looking carefully.
So are you in a relationship now after?
Yes. So, like, my divorce from number 7's been final for a couple of years, and I've been on the dating apps off and on,
Mhm.
and I have met somebody who's very nice and much different than all the other guys I've dated, and so we're getting along really well, so it's really nice, and it's a nice change, and he's
Mhm.
somebody who appreciates me for being me, and he's not trying to change me, and he meets a lot of my criteria,
That's
and
so
my
great.
daughter likes him.
That's good. So did you go through healing journey from the last one to the new
I
one?
did. Well, right before the COVID lockdown started, but, in 2020, I went to a class, and the closing was, "Cut the cord from something that no longer serves you." And I wasn't thinking divorce, but I was thinking, "I need to change. I want the relationship the way it is to change." Now, had I known that was gonna lead to divorce, I mean, I probably still would have said it because it needed to change. I just
Mhm.
didn't know the change was gonna be divorce. But it took a while to get to the divorce part. But and then I moved to Portland from California, and I found my therapist, and that really helped my healing journey. And I started journaling a lot more, and I have published 2 books about the relationships, and that's really helped my journey, and it's become a very magical part of my healing journey, so that's really nice. And then getting to know other people who have suffered, especially from narcissistic abuse, because that's number 7, and so I got to know a lot of other people. Who's like, "Oh, I'm not alone in
Mhm.
this issue of being with a narcissist and, just the whole topic of toxic relationships in general. So I was able to see that, okay, there's things I can do to change myself to be a better person anyway, but I don't have to put up with a crappy relationship. So that's pretty cool. I don't have to settle,
Right.
and I can be my best person, and I can find people and attract people who are like-minded and they're on a healing journey and they've done work. Look at all these cool people. The journey's it's an ongoing thing. There's always little things you're finding that need to be continually healed. So,
Yeah, I feel there's always circumstances or situations that come up
mhm,
that will trigger me just a little bit. Whoa, what was that from? And you just have to
yeah,
reflect on yourself. Okay, where is that stemming from? Past relationship or childhood? Like, am I feeling this way?
right,
And
right.
reflect on it and
Well,
continue to grow that way also.
I took a very intensive workshop. It was an online workshop. It was like 3 days. I learned a couple of things like, "Oh, this thing happened in my young teenhood that I thought I'd set aside because I forgave the person." But then I
Mhm.
started realizing that has really affected all my relationships. So let's just, really get rid of that because so you don't have to keep reliving that chapter
Mhm.
and you can set the whole thing aside and it doesn't have to be part of your story anymore. It
Right.
doesn't have to be part of who you are. This was a significant issue. For example, I hadn't realized I was hanging on to resentment about one thing about the ex because he owed me a lot of money.
Mhm.
And I really
Yeah.
wanted that lot of money because I could get out of debt then. But it's like, then I realized I need to accept the fact that I may never see the money and, okay, let that go. And I wrote him a letter. He's in prison. I couldn't tell him. I wrote the letter and I mailed it. And it's
Mhm.
like, that was so uh, lightning. It just lifted my spirits. And a few days later, the house sold and I got my money. Just lifted me out of that I hadn't
Yeah.
realized I was still hanging on to.
Mhm.
Things do keep cropping up. Not as much anymore, but I'm sure I keep thinking of things, because I want to make sure I don't repeat patterns. So,
Yeah. I actually had that conversation with a friend a lot,
uh-huh.
because both of my relationships, I had a lot of financial abuse in it. My first one, I was always broke.
Yeah.
And then the second one, things were fine at the beginning, and then at the end, it's almost like I could tell that he wanted out but didn't wanna leave
Uh,
because he drained us of all of our money, and then I wasn't allowed to spend anything or anything, even though I was working. So now it's like I have a kinda like a fear of finances, and I grew up with nothing.
yeah.
So it's like money is a big thing for me, and I always think if I'm ever in another relationship, I don't think I would ever share money. But then you should feel comfortable doing that if you're in a committed, safe relationship also. I mean, I know that's something that I still have to work on and overcome, but still kind of fresh, so.
I love Thankfully, there are really good money coaches out there who can help with that, and I love this mantra my daughter has. It's like, "Money loves me and I love money," and money's just energy.
Mhm.
I'm not looking
Right.
for anybody to take care of me at this point because I have enough money to take care of my needs at this point and
Mhm.
save for fun stuff, so this is great. Everybody can take care of their own bills, and then if we're gonna live together, maybe we share. We can be modern adults, and we can share that responsibility, and I'm glad that I can do that.
Yeah. I think it all comes down to having the conversation at the beginning.
Yes,
Mhm,
yes.
and I never had those conversations either
No,
because I was
no.
young, I didn't know.
Well, I was the same way.
Yeah. So you said that you, went to therapy. Was there any other type of tools that you use during your healing?
I still see the therapist. I do therapy. Like I said, I journal. I walk every day. Number one, it's good exercise. And number two, it gets me out in the nature. And I don't care if it's raining or if the snow's only slushy. I won't walk on the ice, but I get out there. So it gets me into a meditative state almost because I'm enjoying nature and that's where I'm the happiest. So that's a really good tool for me. Being based with my family, that's really healing. And just writing, and sometimes I'll take a writing workshop. Writing has become a very important part of my healing practice because I'm allowing myself to be creative again in many
Mhm.
different ways. I'm knitting up a storm and the writing. These are creativity. I hadn't realized how much I was suppressing that.
Yeah. It's really important to find yourself after all the
Yeah.
trauma and figure
Yeah.
out what you enjoy doing
Yeah.
and really
Exactly.
continue doing that.
Yeah. And I sing a lot. I don't care if people hear me, but it's soothing to me and it's just fun. So, yeah,
Yeah.
those are the little things.
Yes. So you said that your kids like the new guy that you're talking to.
My
Um,
daughter has met him once,
mhm.
and they got along really well, so that's a good thing, and
That's good.
hopefully my grandchildren will meet him over the holidays, and hopefully they'll like him. But yeah,
Well, that'll be fun.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
do you feel when people leave toxic relationships that they really need to go through therapy and learn boundaries and mindset? And is that really important for them to be able to get out of the cycle?
I think therapy is very helpful. You could take workshops, you could join support groups or mentoring groups. If you can find a therapist, great. If you can't, there are a lot of people out here who are willing to help women or men going through toxic relationships or their coaches. If you're in a violent relationship, get the heck out of there, go to a shelter, call the cops, do whatever you can to make yourself and your kids safe. Just get
Yes.
the heck out of there.
Your
And that's
safety is
that's
number
one
one.
yeah, that's the one thing I didn't do. When my daughter was 3 and I was married to he didn't beat us to a pulp, but he hit us. And it's like, there's nothing worse than coming home seeing your 30-year-old bruised because he's just slapped her hard against. I'm out doing church service. What are you doing hitting my kid? Did I call
Mhm.
the cops? No. Did I tell the church leaders? No. And those are two big mistakes. I should have done both of those things. Definitely should have called the cops. Um, but I didn't, so call the cops if you need to do that, or at least get yourself to a shelter if you can. I mean, just get yourself somewhere safe.
Okay, I just wanna touch on that real
Yeah,
quick because that is a big part of the physical abuse. People don't call the cops. They don't
right,
tell nobody. They hide
right,
it for so long, and people
right.
wonder why they didn't do that or why they didn't just leave. So you saying that yourself, why did you not if you feel comfortable
No,
talking about it.
because I know it's, because number 1, they always apologize, and number one
Mhm,
2, it's always your fault, and so now you feel guilty and ashamed that you allowed that to happen because it's never their fault. And then they apologize, "I'll never do it again, and so you believe them until it
mhm.
happens again. And then one day that particular husband came home from work because he was like a EMT, so he was gone for 2 days at a time. Well, in one of those times, I was packed up and had my stuff to the trucking place, and he came home from work, and I said, "You're driving us to the airport? We're leaving, you're driving us to the airport." 'Cause in a couple of days, had my mom bought me a plane ticket, and we were out of there. And I did tell, my female church leader, but, so she helped me get everything together and get it out of there, but yeah, it's really hard because you don't want anybody to know. But,
Mhm.
who do you tell when the guys just smashed all the windows in your house? Well, I ran to the neighbors, and then I did go to the church leader, and this was before he started hitting us, and it's like, "Well, do you think he'll hit you?" "No, I don't think he'll ever hit us." He just
Yeah,
smashed all the windows.
and I wanna touch on that too
Yeah.
because I know growing up, I seen a lot of violence in relationships with my mom and all of her boyfriends and everything.
Mm,
And in my mind, I always said I would never let a guy hit me. If he ever laid his hands on me, he was done. But what I found out after my marriage was that physical abuse is not just hitting. And I do not think that people realize that. Physical abuse is somebody throwing something toward you or at you, but it doesn't hit you,
good point.
hitting something beside you to scare you, punching walls, kicking walls.
Oh,
I
wow,
mean,
yeah, yeah, you're right.
I've had plates being thrown across the room. I've had doors being kicked, walls being punched, like, I've had my
Oh,
arm grabbed a couple of times, "Let go of me now," you know? But I never realized that all of that was physical abuse, and I'm not saying
ah,
that I was innocent and I never threw anything or anything like that, but I didn't know that that was
right.
wrong. They
'Cause
make
that's
you
what
so angry
yeah,
that you react too, and then you
yeah,
start reacting like they react,
yeah,
and I didn't realize that either. "Why am I like this? This is not who I am." And I'm not like that now.
yeah. Well,
So
and
it's
it's
just if you get
interesting.
to a
Yeah,
point in a
yeah,
relationship where you just feel so out of control in yourself and it's becoming physically dangerous around you or
Right.
even around your kids, that's
Yeah.
still physical abuse.
Good point. That's good. Really good point. I remember husband number 3 who hit us both, and we were going through the throes of divorce. He wasn't her biological father, but he adopted her. We're fighting over visitation. Neither she nor I wanted her be able to have to go off and visit him, and she didn't want to visit him, and after a few years, that stopped.
Yeah, I always gave my kids a choice, like, "You can go see your dad, if you don't want to, you don't have to," or stop them from
Yeah,
being able to see him.
yeah.
That was a issue in my marriage because we didn't have kids together. Well, why do they always go see their dad? Well, that's their dad. But when they get older, they know what they want.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, unless they're gonna beat them or something and put them in harm, I think it's
right.
a little bit different, but if they've never actually hurt the child in a physical way,
Oh, that's good.
I don't
Yeah.
think that you should really keep your kids away from their dad because I think that does more harm than anything.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not in harm's way, yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. But by the time she was 7 and 8, she didn't wanna see him anyway, you know. I don't know if he brought her back early, but, she didn't wanna see him.
Yeah.
And he didn't force it.
Yeah, it happens. It's a
Yeah.
hard situation for, I mean, everybody.
Sure.
You wanna say some people don't change, but
Well,
they
you
can
hope they
change
do.
behaviors, yeah. I mean, they can kinda learn and change their behaviors, but also sometimes I think people are just wrong for each other. And you
True.
try so hard to make it work, and trying so hard to make it work just makes it worse, especially if it's a toxic situation.
Yeah, and again, that's part of the healing pr you have to give yourself permission to leave if it's
Mhm.
really not gonna work out.
Yeah.
And, the narcissist is not gonna change. Often somebody who's really abusive is not gonna change while you're
Mhm.
there. You do don't feel bad on yourself if you have to feel like you need to go.
Yeah,
Like,
most definitely.
yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
it's
I
like,
know I was married, and to me, marriage was something that you didn't leave, it's
"Me
forever.
too, me
You're gonna
too."
do everything you can to make it work, whatever you have to do, but at the end of the day, if things aren't changing and you're becoming more miserable and the situation is getting more and more out of hand, it's not gonna get better. God's not gonna
No,
want you to stay into that relationship.
no, number 6 and um, we got married, like, right as I was turning 40, that year or something, and, he wasn't a bad person, he wasn't abusive, it turned out to be a very boring marriage, and I
Mhm.
got married because my daughter was heading off to Japan as a foreign exchange student, and, I realized later, it's like, "Well, I don't wanna be alone," and he had come along. The straw that broke the camel's back was I started going therapy while I was married to him, and then we realized, well, maybe, see if your husband will come in. And I asked him, well, I'm going to therapy. Would you join me? Oh, no, it's all your problem. It's like, so at that point, and, we hadn't been married that long. It's like,
Mhm.
well, if you're not going to help me see what we can do to make things better.
Yeah, I feel like that's how the breaking point and when you can tell the toxic relationship's not gonna work anymore when you say, "Hey, let's go to therapy," or "You need to go to therapy." If they
Yeah,
go to therapy, they're working on themselves.
right.
They're just deflecting any type of question that usually comes toward them about
Yeah.
themselves to work to figure out whatever they need to work on. And then if you go to, like, couples therapy, because I think we did 2 rounds of marriage counseling, and then we did it on our own also.
Okay.
E Every time, his answer was, "Well, you weren't doing anything that they said to do." That was his answer every single time. I was like, "What do
Oh,
you mean? What wasn't I doing and what were you doing?" But after so long, I just realized that therapy wasn't gonna help anything. I just feel like when it gets to that point, either it's gonna work or it's not. And that's the time when you need to decide, okay, are we gonna keep doing this same little dance or
right,
we gonna
right,
end it?
right. And like number 7, for years, every now and then I would say, well, why do you like me?
Mhm.
And it's not like I'm fishing for compliments, because 'cause I'm secure in myself, but the guy I'm dating now, I don't even have to ask for say he'll openly say nice things about me or say things that he likes about me. It's like, "Oh, I feel very beautiful inside and out, and I'm okay with who I am." So
It's really important to learn how to love yourself. So I
exactly.
found it's so hard to do, I feel,
Mhm.
after you've been in so many toxic relationships or even if that's all that you've known your entire life.
Right.
I didn't know how to love myself. people would say something nice to me, I would flinch because why are you being nice to me? Like,
Yeah.
why are you saying anything nice to me at all? And
What do you want?
yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly how I feel like, what's your motive?
Yeah.
It's sad, but I mean, it's something you really have to work through that part.
You do. You do. And it's such an important it's such an important part of healing and
Mhm,
continuing and being a happy person. You may not love yourself every day, you may not love certain parts, but those are things you can work on. But
mhm.
you've got a spark of divinity in you. So you love yourself.
Yep.
It's important. It's important. And be joyful.
Yeah, another thing that, um, people would tell me they were proud of me. Or, "Look at all the amazing things you're doing." That would throw me off too. "What do you mean proud of me? Why are you proud of me? What am I doing that you should be proud of me about?" Or, "What have I done? I'm not doing anything." I decided I was going to do this one specific thing, and,
Uh-huh.
that's what I did. I
Uh,
mean, that's just doing what I said I was going to do and being able to do what I wanted to do, because in the past, it would have been tearing me down so I wouldn't do it. So
okay. Okay.
to me, that's what I struggled with, and so it took me a while to figure out that, "Hey, I am worthy, I do deserve good things, I should be proud of myself, and I have to keep a book, and I have to write down all these things I've accomplished
Good.
and
Good.
everything that I have things that I have worked through, so I can
Uh-huh.
go back and read it, so I can remind myself."
Good.
Because my brain is I'm not a doctor, but I'm guessing from all the trauma, it blocks things out. So writing it down and going back and reading it, it
Good.
reminds me of everything that I've accomplished and gone through and healed and yeah,
I
because
took
I
a
just
work
forget.
well, good, and you should remember because I know you're a wonderful person.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I took a workshop once, and one of the exercises we had big sheets of butcher paper for each person around the room and a million sticky notes. Write all the things you've accomplished this year, and then we'd stick them up on the wall, and then we'd share them with the group. And I was just thinking, instead of making resolutions, which I never do anyway, besides setting goals for your new year's, like that could be a wonderful thing you could do, like at the end of the years. Let's look back on our year and see all the things. Celebrate yourself.
Mhm,
And I also try to do I don't do it every day, but I love to do gratitude lists. Even if you're grateful for the same thing 20 times, writing it out, but it's like, be grateful for the little things. Be grateful for all these things. You don't have to do it just at Thanksgiving.
mhm.
But that's another part of, like, the healing process because you 'cause you're grateful for because there's numerous good things if you just keep looking for them, and yet don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, and that's really a good comment to make too, because as you're healing, all those negative things are gonna come back.
They
It's gonna wear you down, but you have to and that's another reason why I keep a book because sometimes I self-doubt myself, and this doesn't happen as
mm,
much anymore, but when I first started healing, like, constantly in my head was, "Why are you doing this? You're not good enough. You're
oh,
not gonna do this," and all those bad
right,
thoughts
right, right.
from what I'm so used to hearing. So you really have to retrain your brain to be like, "No, I can do this. I'm worthy
Mhm.
of this. I deserve this," all the opposite things.
I have a Post-it note just behind where the computer is at the moment on the wall above my desk. Hopefully, I'll never take it down, but it says, "I
Mm,
am strong, I am capable, I am worthy, I am enough."
mhm.
And I put that there a long time ago, and it's gonna stay there because it's not that I doubt myself like I used to as much. It's like, but there are moments when you just need to remind yourself that you are a really wonderful person, even though maybe you're having a sad moment or
Yeah.
but
I have one that says, "What if I fall? Oh, but darling, what if you fly?" And I love that because I
that
was
is
always
nice.
scared to do things, and
Uh-huh.
now, instead of being scared, I just do it and see what happens.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great. And why not?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's been my last 6 months on starting this whole journey of teaching people and sharing everybody's story and what domestic violence is. I don't want
It's
people to feel alone like I was and think I was the
right.
only one in the world going through what I was going through.
Right. Well, that's like I don't know, it's been a year or 2. I was on a summit that was international, like, about narcissistic abuse.
Hmm.
I had no idea until I started working on my book how many people suffer from that, and you're
Yeah.
looking for little stats and things, and
Yes.
it's like but then, you find this community of people it's not that we're grateful that we went through it, but look at all these people who are healing and offering support
Mhm.
because we're not alone. And it's not a great thing to experience, whatever kind of toxicity you're going through. But there are people who can put their arms around you and tell you you're going to be okay and you can be okay. And,
Yeah.
we'll help you get through this, even if all I can do is give you a hug virtually or physically, I'm there to give you a hug. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Joanne, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Your honesty and strength are such an inspiration for anyone listening who feels stuck in their own toxic patterns. I hope Joanne's story reminds you that healing is possible and that it starts with choosing yourself and trusting God through the process. Thank you for listening. And remember, your story isn't over, it's unfolding. If today's episode spoke to your heart, don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss a new story of healing and hope. Share this episode with someone who needs a reminder that they're not alone because you never know who needs this in life. If you are ready to take the next steps in your own healing journey, I invite you to check out my free quiz to see if you might be in a toxic relationship. It's a powerful first step toward clarity and freedom. And you can also learn more about my one on one Christian coaching program, where I help men and women break free from unhealthy cycles and step into purpose God has for their lives. And don't forget to grab your copy of my book, Behind Closed Doors, where I share my story of surviving domestic violence and finding healing and learning to trust God through it all. And thank you for turning into Silent No Longer. Until next time, keep growing and keep trusting God for your plan in life. All right, and goodbye.
Bye.
If today's episode spoke to your heart, don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss a new story of healing and hope. Share this episode with someone who needs a reminder that they're not alone because you never know whose life it might change. If you're ready to take the next steps in your own healing journey, I invite you to check out my free quiz to see if you might be in a toxic relationship. It's a powerful first step toward clarity and freedom. You can also schedule a free clarity call with me if you're ready to break chains, release bondages, overcome limited beliefs, and build confidence and self worth. And don't forget to grab a copy of my book, Behind Closed Doors, where I share my own story of surviving domestic abuse, finding healing, and learning to trust God through it all. And thank you for turning in to Silent No Longer.